Hello guys, and welcome to another episode of Bella's Hat. In this week, today is the 17th of May 2025, and this is the roundup for this week. We have the Rainbow Map website, and they have downgraded the UK from a green zone to a yellow zone. What does that mean? Well, it means that the UK has steadily becoming a place where it is no longer desirable for LGBT people to live or work. And why is that? It has to do with the recent Supreme Court ruling decision that has actually made that downgrade. But this downgrade has not been because of that. Steadily over the years, we have seen a steady decline over the past 15 years. So the UK now has regressed 15 years when it's been at the top of the league back in, I think it was 2015, around that time. So I shall read what Katrin Hugendubel has said from the Advocacy Director, ILGA Europe. It says, moves in the UK, Hungary, Georgia and beyond signal not just isolated regressions, but a coordinated global backlash aimed at erasing LGBTI rights, cynically framed as the defense of tradition or public stability, but in reality designed to entrench discrimination and suppress dissent. So there you have it. It's an exportation now of what we are seeing from the big orange guy and the Kremlin. And which ones? So you're asking yourselves, which places are the most desirable places to live? Well, my darlings, and I do say my darlings in a very endearing way, it's not meant to be an insult. Oh my God, I had somebody tell me this week not to call him darling, because darling, apparently it's offensive if I don't know the person. And the thing is, I usually say darlings in a very endearing way. Darling. So, Malta is actually the gayest place, sitting on the top rank for the last 10 years. So guys and galleys, if you want to move away from the UK, I suggest moving to Malta. Might have to practice my Maltese. And second place, the second gayest place. Well, not saying that it's gay, but it does support LGBT rights, okay? 85 points. Belgium jumped to second place after adopting policies tackling hatred based on sexual orientation, gender identity, and sex characteristics. Iceland is third with a ranking of 84. Now, if you go to rainbowmap.com, you will be able to see all the descriptors as to how they rank each country. So the key figures explained is that conversion practices are only banned in 10 countries. 6 of them where LGBTI people do not have any protection from discrimination. We have Belgium, Bosnia, Herzegovina, Denmark, Finland, Greece, Iceland, Montenegro, Serbia and Spain are the only countries that have full coverage of SOGIESC in their anti-discrimination legislations. Hate crime and hate speech on the grounds of sexual orientation, gender identity and sex characteristics are prohibited in Belgium, Denmark, Greece, Iceland, Malta and some regions in Spain and in the UK. Marriage equality for same-sex couples is only available in 22 countries, and 18 of them without any legal protection of same-sex partnership. Trans parenthood is fully recognized only in 8 countries. Only Germany, Greece, Iceland, Malta, Portugal and Spain prohibit unnecessary surgical or medical interventions on intersex children. And 11 countries still don't have any legal or administrative procedures for legal gender recognition. So in addition, Bulgaria, Hungary and Russia have laws that make legal gender recognition completely impossible. So guys, if you live in those places, yeah, move the fuck out. Only in 12 countries trans people can have legal gender recognition based on self-determination, and freedom of assembly and association for LGBTI communities are restricted or under attack in at least 14 countries. Sexual orientation and gender identity are qualification criteria for seeking asylum in 27 countries. Intersex asylum seekers are protected in the law only in 6 countries. No wonder a lot of trans people in the UK are asking Denmark for asylum. Yeah, there has been a spike. People are afraid of living in the UK now. I mean, let me be honest with you. I'm also scared. I have been thinking of moving away. But the question is, where do I go? Spain? Sí, yo puedo hablar español, pero ¿en qué parte de España? ¿Andalucía? ¿Extremadura? ¿Cataluña? En fin. Anyways, I'm going back to English. But if we actually zoom in under the criteria of gender, we can see that the UK actually ranks very, very low. UK ranks 22nd position. Europe-wide is 41.85%, and with the European Union average is 51.13%. And under the category score, we have equality and non-discrimination, 49.13%, family, 85.67%, hate crime and hate speech, 40.55%. Legal gender recognition has taken a huge drop, down to 6.57%. Intersex bodily integrity, big fat 0. Civil society space, 100%, good. Asylum, 16.67, yeah. They are, like, UK really needs to step up. People really do need to write to the MPs as to why we've got so low numbers. I'm shocked. I mean, one of the reasons why I came from Gibraltar to the UK was knowing that it was a safe place for me to, you know, fully transition. But knowing all of these things, it's kind of made me think as to if I should actually stay here longer. I am going to be absolutely honest with you guys. I'm really thinking about leaving. But where is the question? Where in the map am I going to end up? We have another bit of news. The UK Equality Watchdog is to extend gender guidance consultation, says insiders. 6-week deliberation asked for by Commons Committee, expected to be granted after internal backlash. So what has happened is a lot of backbenchers have actually made complaints to Bridget Phillipson. It says, the UK's Equality Watchdog is expected to give in to demands that it allows more time to consider its formal guidance on the Supreme Court ruling about gender issues after what sources say has been a big backlash from staff and stakeholders. I wonder who. Some insiders believe the Equality and Human Rights Commission may be forced into a U-turn on its initial response, which was criticised as overly literal in defining how organisations should respond to the court decision that woman in the Equality Act refers only to a biological woman. The EHRC's interim advice, published 9 days after the Supreme Court decision, set out that transgender people should not be allowed to use toilets of the gender they live as, and that in some cases they also cannot use toilets of their birth sex. So this has actually had quite an impact on trans people who work for a living. I mean, Don't we all? Trans support groups have reported to The Guardian that employers are already asking trans staff to use different facilities, in many cases causing distress and outing them to colleagues. That is horrible. It's absolutely horrid that you've got these places of work where you've used a female or your toilet that matches your gender, and all of a sudden, because some judge just made it an arbitrary, we will say an arbitrary decision because it was only one-sided. Now you have to use the other toilets, so it causes a lot of distress. It will cause a lot of anxiety, depression. These things, they will add up. And the pushback has been really strong, apparently. Some stakeholders are saying they can no longer work with us. Loads of staff say they're looking for other jobs. The approach from the chair and senior leadership has been really secretive and paranoid. Yeah, I honestly don't understand why. On Tuesday, lawyers for the leading advocacy group Translucent wrote to the EHRC warning that statements made by Faulkner risk prejudicing the outcome of the consultation. In the letter from the cross-party WEC asking the Commission to extend the consultation timetable, Sarah Owen, its chair, said many trans people were anxious and unsure about where this ruling leaves them. The letter sent on behalf of the whole committee asked Faulkner to give information on a number of points, including what steps the EHRC will be taking to ensure that the Code of Practice is supportive of the rights of all people, as noted in the Supreme Court judgment. And in another news, which is related to this, the Good Law Project. Yes, they are actually taking the EHRC to court. What does that mean? Right. The Good Law Project has actually asked the community how they have been affected after the Supreme Court ripped up the Equality Act, and this response has been very chilling. The response has been quite overwhelming. They have received hundreds of submissions, mine included, outlining the devastating impact of the ruling has had on trans and non-trans people alike. Most of these messages have been full of fear. I'm not surprised. Trans people say that they now feel unsafe both in public spaces and at work. People have been told by their employers that they can no longer use the toilets that they have been using for years, which could force them to out themselves. People who work on the road and on building sites tell us that they are very often no gender neutral or accessible spaces for them to use, which means they could lose their jobs. And trans people reaching out have expressed concern for others, telling us that they don't want to take up the few accessible toilets available which are needed by disabled people. Really, I think it is really screwed up that an employer asks you to use a disabled toilet. Sorry, but that's fucked up. Even when people haven't been excluded explicitly, the responsible comments from politicians and the premature interim update from the Equality and Human Rights Commission mean that people are in fear of policing and violence. Trans people are being pushed to the margins, feeling unable to carry on taking part in public life. And it's not just trans people. Cis women have also told us they now live in fear of being challenged when using the women's toilets. So this is really bad. The Good Law Project have also heard stories of violence following the ruling, including harassment and physical assault. Come on, what the hell has this Supreme Court ruling done? It hasn't done anything to achieve anything. All it has done is actually made things worse for everyone. It's not just trans women, but also cis women as well. And they call themselves feminists? You have got to be bloody joking. Trans people feel like this ruling has given permission to shun them out of public life, making them smaller and telling them they don't belong. Lots of trans people spoke to us about the emotional impact of learning they can no longer take part in the hobbies they love or spend time in the communities that make them feel welcome. As an example, me. I love going to the gym. I like working out. Darlings, don't you like it? And I have been told that I have got to use the male toilets. It's like, hello? Excuse me? What? Do you know that you've only got urinals? It's like, do you expect me to actually go like that on a urinal? Yeah, I don't really do well on urinals. I've never, ever gone to urinals. I have shy kidneys, you know that. What is the problem with people just having a bloody unisex toilet with cubicles and saying these are the toilets that you can use, that anybody can use? I just don't understand that. Why not make toilets unisex? Or even better, just design some, fangled DNA changing drug that makes everybody have vaginas and penises. Everybody's the same, problem solved. There, that's an idea for pharmacological sciences, and I'm going to take that idea. If you take that away from me, I'm gonna sue you. We refuse to let this become the new status quo. At Good Law Project, we are working alongside the trans community to fight this injustice. Yes, darlings, it is an injustice. We are raising funds. So guys, they are doing work against this judgment. Consider donating. They are also bringing a legal challenge to the EHRC's interim updates. The individual claimants sent a formal letter under the pre-action protocol for judicial review, which requires a response within 14 days. The challenge against the Equality and Human Rights Commission and the Equalities Minister, Bridget Phillipson, is supported by a team of barristers, including 2 KCs and 2 juniors, one of whom is trans, instructed by Good Law Project. The claimants say that the interim guidance, which requires toilet use based on biological sex, a position then adopted by Government Minister Bridget Phillipson, is either wrong in law or, if right, breaches the UK's obligations under the Human Rights Act 1998, and they ask the High Court to declare the UK in breach of its human rights obligations. In their detailed legal analysis, the first to be published following the Supreme Court's decision, the individuals set out why the EHRC's guidance is not sustainable as a matter of law. Put shortly, the definition of man and woman in the Equality Act 2010 does not read across the different legislation which deals with toilets and the normal legal meaning of those words, which include lived gender, continues to apply. Good Law Project is publishing the formal letter in line with its transparency principles. The claimants also say that, in interpreting the Equality Act 2010, the Supreme Court ignored its obligation in Section 3 to comply with the UK's obligations under the European Convention on Human Rights. In their case, the obligation on the High Court will be placed centre stage, and the Minister for Women and Equalities will be asked to choose whether she abandons her statements that trans people must use the toilet of their biological sex or defend it as consistent with the UK's human rights obligations. The intersex claimant will also require the Minister and EHRC to explain what spaces intersex people should use and how that stance complies with the law. Good Law Project's founder, Jolyon Maugham, KC, said, "The stark and needlessly cruel position adopted by the government and EHRC humiliates trans people by forcing them to use the wrong toilets and obliges them to reveal deeply personal information about their gender to complete strangers just to take a wee. It is deeply unkind, far removed from the national mood of mutual respect and live and let live, and is unlawful to boot. There is more information on the website if you actually want to read the content. So guys, what you think? I honestly think we are fighting back. That's the good news about this week. We are fighting back. Yes, we needed that. We needed a little bit of good news. So yes, follow and subscribe me. It will help the channel quite a bit. And I will see you next time on Bella's Hat. Take care.